end of the division of the two Berlins, East one and Western one, marked the end of the communism as it was intended for many, many decades. However, the process has been slower and it has been evolving in a different manner. And I will try to explain also how the new idea, the new leftist idea, as a phoenix reborn from the ashes of the old ideology. First of all, you have to think that after the Second World War, the situation in Europe was particularly difficult. Why? I will try to explain how was the situation. The Western Europe, inside the Western Europe, there were strong parties that were aligned more with the Soviet Union than with the Western ideologies. Those parties would have liked to bring Western Europe to the East instead of being allied with America, so with the Western values. So, in this situation, you can imagine, for example, for an owner of a factory, of a business, when the owner of this business arrived inside their factory, all the people that were working there were probably aligned or were part of the Communist Party. It was a quite different situation in comparison with the one in the United States. In the United States, in fact, you had the communist idea were banned. So the evolution of the communist and the socialist idea in Europe has been different. But nowadays, they tend to the same point. I will explain in this video how they evolved from the ashes of the old communist and socialist country and what we have nowadays in our current society. So, but in order to arrive, as I explained, imagine somebody that was a owner of a business, of a factory, and when he was working in the factory and when he was when that person was looking around him, he had many people that were communist and they didn't look in a nice way to the owners. Why? Because they considered that the owners, for some reason, had stolen something from them. So the ingenuity of people prevailed over the situation. Another time, all the owners of business started little by little to align themselves to the socialist and the communist ideas. Yeah, you listen well. Most of the owners of the business in Europe and then around the world started to align with leftist idea. Why? Very easy to understand. It was more controllable, the leftist idea, if the owner was part of the same ideology than being opposed to that. So, in Europe, you can see it's very easy to understand the situation. So you had many Western oligarchs, people extremely rich, that became communist in Italy, in France. So, now you can imagine when you have some meetings in the factory, you had all the people, all the workers, all the blue collars that were from leftist idea. The syndicates were with leftist idea, but the same owner of the factory was there supporting their idea. So in all this, in this environment, you had people with left idea plus people that became with left idea, that had better study, that had better argument. So little by little, the owners, that we could call also oligarch, if you like that term, became also the one that ran the parties. Why? Because in the meeting they had better argument, because they had the opportunity, and they had better studies, they had more arguments. So little by little they became also the leaders of these parties. And then it arrived the end of the Berlin Wall. The falling of the Berlin Wall certified one simple fact: the failure of the socialist and the failure of the communist ideas. That's it. It was proven that the socialist ideology and the communist ideology, or if you better prefer, the social communist ideology, was a failed ideology, a failed idea. Why? Because it is too limiting of the people. But at the same time, it has something that is extremely tempting for most of the leaders around the world. What is extremely tempting? The way to limit freedom is a way to control people. So that is the part of the socialist idea that are extremely tempting for powerful people around the world. So, little by little, the old communists and the old socialists were orphans of the old ideology. But at the same time, the owners, the rich people, let's say, if you can allow me, were the one embracing also this ideology. So, little by little, it started a new set of identitary objectives that became the new ideology of the old communists and socialists around the world. What are these new identitary points that are followed by the old leftists? Well, we start with the protection of the environment. The protection of the environment became a religion. Sometimes it turns out to be a violent religion. For example, what happened with the eco-terrorists, the one that commit act of terrorism in order to advocate for the environment. And then you had all the inclusive language. The inclusive language is a way to treat the other and to respect the other. But in some countries, to use the inclusivity means a limitation of the freedom for the people that don't like to use all this inclusivity. For example, because grammatically means a mistake. But then you have another revolution, and what we know, for example, as the gender ideology. This is the central point, the gender ideology, on which rotate all the other aspects. And make no mistake, I believe that we should, as humans, respect each other. We should be extremely respectful. But at the same time, when we talk about the gender ideology, there are some inconsistencies that should be analyzed. For example, for the people that are supporters of the gender ideology, it's very difficult to define what a woman is. Well, I believe that in the story of humanity, in the history of humanity, women have suffered a lot. For example, Artemisia Gentileschi, the Italian painter, or Camille Claudette, the partner of Rodin. And we have proven that the machismo and the patriarchal way of seeing the society have been repressing women all around the world. Nowadays, we have very serious situation in certain countries with women repression. For example, in Afghanistan, or in some other country, in Africa, or in the Middle East. So, the point is that women have been repressed, but at the same time, nowadays, if you are somebody that sponsors the idea of the gender ideology, probably for you it's very difficult to define what is a woman. From a biological point of view, it's very clear, but it's very difficult to define for these people. For example, March the 8th, it was the Women's Day all around the world, and many women received in the cell phone the greetings for being a woman or for feeling to be a woman. For example, in sport you have transgender that feel themselves as women that are allowed to compete with women. And these people, even if they are assuming hormones, they have the body structure of a man. So for them it's very easy to win all the races, all the competition. Even at boxing level or in some country at wrestling level, you can have ex-men to compete with women, which is, in my point of view, a little bit unfair for women. So all these aspects, so the inclusive language, the environment, the gender ideology, have been embraced for the new left. And there are institutions that are embracing all this ideology. For example, the World Economic Forum is embracing this ideology. The United Nations, Europe, always, there is something that a little bit bizarre, Europe is the first in line with the Agenda 2030, the Agenda 2050, the Green Deal that is killing the agricultural business in Europe. So you have all these people front in line. For example, in Europe, there are many politicians that are discussing about the idea to turn the name Christmas to winter feast. So you can imagine that if you are not able to pronounce the name Christian because somebody could be offended, it's very difficult also to live in such a society, because when you talk to somebody, that person could be offended very easily. And then you have, at the United States level, England, Canada, all the woke culture. And what culture embrace all these ideas. So this represents basically the evolution of what it was, the old communist and socialist idea, and what they are now. And part of these changes, as I said, have been sponsored by extremely rich people, ultra-rich people. The one that goes, for example, to the World Economic Forum. All these people are very worried about the environment, but they go there with their private plane, with private fly. So what they are saying, okay, you should be very concerned about the environment, but at the same time, I have the right to fly private. So it represents a little, it's difficult to understand. It's not consistent, but it is what it is. And this represents the evolution that occurred from the old socialist and communist idea on what we have nowadays. If you like the video, please share it with your friend, subscribe to the channel, and I'm looking forward to have you in my next presentation.